Now, like any sane person on the weekend, the first thing I do is get up, look at my portfolio, even though the market's not even open, because I love what I do. I love trading options, and I've especially been loving trading tech as of late. Now, one of the things that's happened with the Nasdaq, if you guys are tech traders, is that it's been crushed. There's been a ton of companies that have just been losing value. And so here I am on the weekend, and I wanted to really comb through and see if there's any stocks that I should be buying. And I found this one. I've already doubled down on it. And now I'm actually going to triple down on it. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. Everyone, welcome back to Drawbridge Finance. My name is Levi Woods. This is an opinion channel only about money. I don't offer financial advice in any way, shape, or form, and I'm not a professional investor. However, I do trade, and I do trade a ton. I love doing it, and I use options, I have long-term holdings, and all that fun stuff. Now, one of the trades that came up recently in my portfolio was this little company called Asana. And I had never really heard about it, but a couple of weeks ago, when the stock had already dropped to half its price, there was a bunch of insider buying, and I started to look at this and thinking, well, wow, this stock is actually trading right around the value where the insiders were buying. And this usually to me is an indicator that there's some value in the stock. So I went ahead and put in a small position. Then the stock has moved, it's gone further, and I looked at it a little bit harder and I added into my position a little bit further. Well, now the stock has slid down even further, and I have to really take a close look at exactly all the details. So that's exactly what I'm going to go over today. And now this is going to be a pretty heavy little video, but I'm going to show you with graphics to help soften the load. Let's get into it. The stock we're talking about today is called Asana. The ticker is ASAN. If we click on the year to date, we can see that at the beginning of the year it was trading at $70, and now it's trading down at $50, which is a substantial reduction in price. But I want to look back a little bit further. What has it done in the last year? Well, wow. This is actually considerably higher. If we look at this right now, it was trading up as high as $141, and now it's at $50. That's almost a third of the price. And that is an extreme move. Now, before we get too much further, we have to look at what this company is. This is Asana, and this is what it actually is. It's a software platform that brings people together in a workplace. It's a paid platform, and it's from the founder of Facebook. So I wanted to look a little bit further. So I did a quick little search on insider trades. This stock was brought to my attention because of insider buying originally. So I wanted to take a look at the insider buying. And I noticed when I looked at this, is this name right here, Dustin Moskovitz. Boy, it comes up a lot. He's just buying, and these are all recent. This was Friday, this was earlier in the week, this was last week. These are all in January, and these are not small purchases. He's buying 250,000 shares at a time. The transaction value is $12 million. He just bought this on Friday. So I immediately grabbed from my calculator and I just add up what he has actually purchased. He bought 3.25 million shares in the last month for a total of $211 million at an average price of $65.21. $211 million is a lot of money, is it not? And he's doing this with his own money. These are direct share purchases. These are not options that he's exercised to buy them. He's just going on the market and buying huge amounts of stock. So I wanted to take a look and see where exactly he was buying. I just started to put arrows on the chart. Where is he buying? Now, these first arrows going back to the end of 2020 were actually him converting some Class A to Class B shares. And that was back when the stock had IPO'd. But right here is where I'm mostly interested. You know, he made a significantly large purchase and the stock was going up. Then he made another one and the stock went up. Then he made another one, the stock went up. The stock came down, he bought some more. The stock went up and then suddenly dropped down and he started just buying like crazy. He's purchased $211 million worth of stock. And this gets me really curious. I want to look at the filing reports. So here's this insider trading, and look at this. These insiders have been buying way more than they've been selling, but there has been some sells, and this is important to note as well. So of course I want to dive a little bit further. I go over to the investors relation page, I go up to the quarterly reports, and we can see that Asana announces record third quarter fiscal 22 revenues, surpasses 100 million in quarterly revenues. I mean, this is really the key, is they're still operating at a net loss. Their net loss per share is 90 cents. This is still not yet a profitable company, but I believe that they will be. And part of the reason for that is this board of directors. I'm just looking at some of the people involved in this and what type of businesses they're in. We've got HubSpot, we've got Quora, we've got a whole team of people. And I'm really interested in this guy, Dustin, who's bought $211 million worth of shares. He's the co-founder and CEO. Now, I don't really know a ton about this guy, but I think to myself, well, I better find out who he is. So I do a quick search on Google and look up his net worth. Well, here he is. He's worth $18.9 billion. Now, that doesn't surprise me at all, because obviously he's got a lot of money if he's buying $211 million worth of stock in a single month. So here's a nice picture of him. He's only 37 years old, and turns out he was one of the co-founders of Facebook. So it doesn't surprise me at all. And we can see in this details that he's moved from Facebook over to Asana in 2008. So this is not some flash in the pan company. This is a company that he's been working on developing for a while, and he's put his blood, sweat, and tears into it. So let's get back to this insider trading. Now, one of the nice things about this is that we can actually click over here on the details and we can look at the actual filing forms. Now, I don't know if you guys have looked at these filing forms before, but this is a lot of transactions, and they normally don't look like this. I'm looking at this and I'm starting to see, well, this is a single week's worth of trading. He bought Class A stocks. He bought 43,000 of them for $52 each. And then later that day, 215,000 more. Another 126,000. These are just massive purchases. And I thought, well, this is way too much data for me to go through. This is Dustin Moskovitz's record at the SEC, and I can see all of the statements. So like any normal person does on a Saturday, I download every single one and I start copying and pasting them into a spreadsheet so I can analyze the data, because clearly there's way too much. So let's take a look at what I built. So I decided to look back at all of his transactions over the last 6 months and see exactly what he's been doing. So 800,000 shares is what he had on June 7th of last year, so just over 6 months ago. And at that time, he was starting to make some purchases. You see, he made a purchase on June 7th, another one June 7th, June 7th, and these are massive transactions. I mean, the transaction value, $1 million, $1 million, $2 million, $4 million, this is all on the same day. And then the next day he's buying again, continues on. So June 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 14th, 15th, 16th. And I start to think, wow, this is nuts. This guy is just like buying huge chunks. I've already looked at the Yahoo chart. I know that when he's buying, it's just before the stock's going to go up. But these are just crazy transactions, and I really want to get into this. So I go a little bit hardcore and I get all of the transactions. I look at every single one, and then I compare that to the stock price. And I made a chart so that you don't have to listen to me anymore, yabber on about it. But this is him purchasing. And now all he did was purchase for the last 6 months. He never sold a single share. And all of this red portion is him buying shares, and he's buying them at market value. And you can see that as he's buying them, this is creating a higher and higher average cost. So we've got his average cost in yellow, we've got his actual share price purchases in red, and then these are days where he didn't trade. And it's really interesting because you can see where he's adding. He's adding massive chunks right before the stock runs up. Then it comes down and he buys a chunk more. Then it runs up and he's not selling. He's not selling at all. Then it drops down, he buys. It drops, he buys. He drops, he buys. All the time, just buying, 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 buying. And like, this is insane. But he's not the only one. Let's take a look at somebody else. Let's take a look at Chris. Way fewer transactions. Now, he's not even on the board of directors, but he's some sort of insider. And he made some transactions, July, August. And he was one of the people that was a net seller. So when I look at these kind of things, I start to think, well, how many shares did he have before and how many does he have now? And you can see when you look at the data, he had 289,000 6 months ago, and he still has 289,000. When we compare it to the stock price, Look at his purchase price. He wasn't even buying at the market value. He was buying at an average cost of 93 cents because he was using some sort of options contract to do so. Probably part of his pay, however he gets paid, he's able to convert those over. And it's pretty interesting because when you look at the transactions, they're very, very small, but when he buys them, but then he's able to sell them for a lot of money. So even though his portfolio value in Asana went from $10 million up to $13 million over the last 6 months, he also took $3 million in cash in transactional value outside of this. I'll show you how that works. I did this little chart where you can see he's basically buying shares and then selling all of them at a massive price. And his share quantity has stayed the same, the quantity in his actual portfolio has stayed the same over time. Unlike Dustin's, who has been growing his portfolio over time. Let's just take a look at a single day. So his transactional value to make a purchase, he's buying shares and paying $24,000. Then he turns around that same day and sells them for $1,585,000 and $25,000. In a single day, he converts $24,000 into $1.6 million. Now these are my kind of people. I like this style. Now let's take a look at Eleanor. She was very active. She has a ton of transactions, but same sort of thing. She's buying stock, and then she's buying it for $4 and then selling it later in the day for $62. And these transactions are just giving her massive cash flow. And what I want to know is what her share value looks like. So you can see all of her transactions are way down here. She's buying stock at $4 a piece. Again, this is what insiders are allowed to do. Her transactional values are very, very small, costing her a debit of under $70,000 in most cases. And her portfolio value went from 5 million to just about 7 million in the last 6 months. Now that in itself, 5 million to 7 million is a substantial increase, but she took $10 million in cash flow out. This is insane. And again, just like Chris, she did not lose any shares. She still owns just as many shares as she did 6 months ago. Now let's look at Tim. He was the smartest one of the bunch. This man, I don't know what he does, but he's been buying the shares, $32,000 transaction, and then selling them later that day for a net profit of $1.3 million. And he timed this so well. If you look at his purchases, he actually has a small average cost basis, but he purchased on every one of these little red dots, and he was purchasing and then selling right at these highs. Unbelievable. Big transactions. His portfolio went from 8 million to 27 million over the past 6 months, and he took $16 million in cash out. He actually sold off that many shares and then bought them back. Genius. But what we're really looking for is he used to own 200,000 shares and now he currently owns 505,000. Now the crazy thing about this is that all 4 of the insiders, some of them were buying, some of them were selling, but all of them have exactly the same number of shares or more. But now we have to look at Dustin because he's the real reason I'm tripling down. So we looked at this before. We know he had amazing timing. We know that he's buying massive transactions. We also know that he hasn't sold anything. His biggest single day transaction was just about $40 million. So these are huge, huge, huge. And here's his portfolio value. So the portfolio was worth 51 million 6 months ago. And as of Friday's close, it was worth over $700,000. That is an absolutely astronomical number. Now he must know something because look at his current share quantity. He was making these purchases and they are big, but he had less than 5 million shares last July, and now he has almost 15 million. Every time he buys, he is buying massive amounts. So when I take a look at something like this, and I think that the CEO himself putting in $211 million, one of the things I thought was, how much is this relative to his net worth? Like if his net worth is really 18.9, how much is an $800,000 position? Because that is really, really important. So I did the math on it. It works out to about 4%. And this totally makes sense to me because I wouldn't allocate more than 4% of my portfolio to a single underlying. So it makes sense. Those numbers make sense relative to his worth, but I think that he stands to make a ton of money on this. And I'm going to be right there with him because it's more fun to get rich with people. And that's exactly why I do this, so we can all get rich together. So do me a favor, leave a comment down below on the stocks that you're buying up right now because I would love to know. And remember to give me a thumbs up so we can all get rich together. Thanks so much for watching and see you very soon.